Korean is no longer just the language of K-dramas and K-pop. It's becoming a global learning trend. Is this simply another ripple effect of K-content's global popularity, or are we witnessing a deeper shift in the cultural standing of the Korean language itself? To explore what's behind this latest boom, we're joined by David Tizzard, Professor of Korean Studies at Seoul Women's University and Hanyang University. Welcome back, Professor Tizzard. I feel like saying 환영합니다 today.
감사합니다. 안녕하세요. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see you both again. Thank you for having me on the show.
Lovely to have you on the show. So, Professor Tizzard, it seems like last year there was a particular Korean phrase.
Yep.
I might sing it now.
Please do.
yeong-won-hi eom-neun. That might have been one of the most popular Korean phrases last year. Of course, it's a part of Golden from KPop Demon Hunters. So how do you think this particular phrase has become such a hot phrase?
It's a hot phrase, maybe there's a couple of things that are really interesting about this. First of all, that's a really difficult song to sing. So well done on attempting that on television. What I love about people around the world learning lyrics through Korean pop songs is this. It's that if you go back to the 90s, the 2000s, before and after, you had Korean people here learning English through pop songs, watching episodes of Friends and How I Met Your Mother, struggling with this foreign language, trying to master it and show their cultural competency. And now, in 2026, the situation has flipped. Now you have people around the world, they're listening to Korean language songs, they're watching Korean dramas, and they're trying to learn the language. So I think it's wonderful how times have changed, and I would love to take this back to people in the 90s, right, in the 2000s, and show them in 20, 30 years, it's going to be very different because they would not be able to comprehend that shift. The second thing about this particular phrase about, being unbreakable, one of the reasons that I love my daughter's fascination with K-pop and with KPop Demon Hunters, with Golden, which she sings on the regular, is that it's a positive message. In sort of turbulent times, in ambiguous environments, things like this, the messages that come out, and this particular one, Forever Unbreakable, I should say, sorry, the yeong-won-hi part, is that it inspires and it motivates and it encourages. It doesn't sort of gaslight into negativity. It doesn't force depression or these kind of things, but it's like, let's go. You can do this. So there's a couple of very interesting things about this phrase becoming popular around the world.
Right. And actually, some figures do show how much of a growth we're seeing in people learning Korean. For instance, in the US, a major language learning app shows a 22% increase in people learning Korean through this particular app. And then there's also more university courses that teach Korean. So do you think a brief Korean lyrics such as that of Golden can actually really lead to people genuinely wanting to study this language?
Yes and no. It might just be the owl notifications coming up on people's phones telling them to do this. There is a growing interest in Korea, in Korean language, in Korean culture. I think it's a little bit of a challenge to put everything on one cultural product, whether it's KPop Demon Hunters, whether it's Parasite, whether it's BTS, and so on. Because what you can really do, and this sounds a bit weird, but you can trace this all the way back to Winter Sonata, right? You can trace this back to 겨울연가, and this comes out 2002. And this was the first real time a Korean cultural product, it was a drama, has gone abroad. And Japanese people, particularly Japanese middle-aged housewives, they were fascinated by Bae-young-jun, Yeon-sama they called him, and they started buying calendars, photo cards, learning the language, coming to Korea to visit Nami Island and all the sites, and it's been growing steadily ever since then. Yes, there's been some ups and downs, but from about 2002, you've had this growing number of people all around the world slowly wanting to learn Korean, and this reflects not only the success of Korean cultural products. They're now spreading further than Japan. They're going out into the world. But it also shows people's attitudes towards, there is a country here called South Korea. We've all seen it online. People might say, where are you from? North Korea, China. And it gets missed a bit. It gets a little bit lost, very sadly. But now people are very much aware of it. So this growing language, is it all because of that one Golden lyric? it's nice to say it is, but this has been growing steadily for a couple of decades now, I think.
Right. Listening to those like 겨울연가 and those other K-contents really shows how we had these key moments in the chronology of interest in Korean language. But I think because we have that platform like Netflix, it helps in spreading it much faster than before.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So, Professor, you did say that you had a daughter who seems to be obsessed with it, and she's right at that age, I think, where she understands it, she wants to learn everything about it, she wants to replicate it. So what other expressions became widely known through K-pop Demon Hunters? Is there anything that she says on the regular or you hear?
My daughter is fluent. Hello, Elizabeth. My daughter is fluent in Korean, so for her, she will hear terms, or people will hear terms in K-pop Demon Hunters, like 선배, like 후배, like 막내, and these are not specific to that film. They're not specific to K-pop. We still use 막내 in a family sometimes as well, and 후배 and 선배 in an academic or a professional setting. But these are Korean cultural terms that don't really easily translate. We don't use them in the West. There are, of course, different cultures will have honorific terms, but I think what you got with K-pop Demon Hunters was you were getting things like 막내 going out of the K-pop ecosphere into broader society. You had people that weren't aware of this suddenly becoming aware. You had things like 대박 coming in. You had the honey ones. People suddenly asking about the Joseon Dynasty Gat and the Honmuns and all of this. So these 막내s, 후배s, 선배s, this was definitely a part of people becoming interested in the culture.
Yes, and you did say that like some of the things we don't really use in English or Western society, some of it doesn't translate. So with the popular Korean lyrics from lines from K-pop dramas or K-dramas and gaining attention, could you maybe give us some examples of some expressions that cannot be, fully conveyed through translation?
That's a really difficult one because the translators now are so skillful. We were talking before we went on air about your linguistic skills across 3 different languages. Back in the early 2000s, when these Korean cultural products were being translated, the translators were obviously doing their best, but they didn't always have specific knowledge of the Korean culture and the culture that they were translating into. Now we have this amazing group of TCKs, third culture kids, people well-versed in multiple environments, and they're able to, as a job, sometimes as a hobby online, they're able to translate these terms in a way that anybody can understand it instinctively, And this happens sometimes. You get celebrity figures. We have people like Darcy Parkett, who does Bong Joon-ho's movies and that. But it's on Netflix, and the reason people can watch K-pop Demon Hunters, sometimes a foreign language movie, is that the subtitles are done so wonderfully. I'm sure, just like me, you've been in conversation, right? And we say, how do you translate this? How do you translate 고소하다? How do you translate 답답하다? 한, 눈치, 정, all of these terms, it becomes very difficult. But thanks to these people and the availability of Netflix, you don't have to download or install something. The streaming services do it for you. So is there anything that's untranslatable now? That might be a broader philosophical question because, everything's a spectrum. There's love and hate in every society. There's emotional intelligence. There's bonding. All of these things exist. And I think rather than saying, concepts we can or cannot translate, it's up to us as humans to open our minds to these concepts there and go, I can begin to understand this through empathy and welcoming and openness.
I feel like it's getting a lot philosophical now.
Sorry.
No. I love the idea. Yeah. But Professor Tizzard, do you feel a different atmosphere in your classrooms? It's because you also have foreign students.
Yeah.
Are they more enthusiastic towards learning Korean these days?
Yes and no. What I've noticed over the last sort of 15 years of doing that is that I now encounter more students, more international students who are able to speak, read, write Korean at a very high level. That's because for the most part, they're in their early 20s. They grew up with second or third generation K-pop and K-dramas. They've had it in their mind to come to this country. It's been a dream. So it's not just this instantaneous, they've learned Korean, but they've been doing it for a decade. They've been doing it through their formative years while this has been at its peak. So I've noticed a huge increase amongst the linguistic ability of some of my students. And that's a challenge for me, and that's inspiring for me to look at them and go, that's amazing what you are capable of achieving. And of course, there are some students that come and they can just sort of say, 안녕하세요, and that's about it. So it does vary, but it's so warm. And I've noticed how Korean people react to it, by the way. In Korea, if you look like me, for example, and you're able to say, 안녕하세요, 삽니다, this kind of thing, people react so very warmly to you, and all you're doing is that. And when you can go beyond that, I love the way Korean people react to other people speaking their language.
And finally, Professor Tizzard, there are probably a lot of challenges for overseas learners when it comes to these complex honorifics and hierarchical expressions that you earlier mentioned. So do you have any personal tips? And also very briefly, do you think this Korean language boom will continue for a while?
To answer your second one, yes, it's going to keep going. Of course, there will be different things that come up. You've got Bad Bunny, you've got Puerto Rico, you've got the Latin thing coming. One thing that I tell my students, which they sometimes miss, is in Korea, when you speak, it's not what you say, sometimes how you say. Generally, you have to look down in Korea. A lot of my students will walk into a room and they'll go, 안녕하세요, and they'll look me in the eyes as they say it. And I'm like, no. You look down in Korea. You have to understand through your nunchi the different hierarchical positions. So speaking the language is one thing, then living and being the language through your body, through your mannerisms, and through your eyes is another thing.
Okay, and on that note, 교수님 감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다. 네.
Thank you very much for your insights as always, and we're looking forward to next time.
Thank you.
And 감사합니다, Walter. We're going to see you back here on Wednesday.
See you on Wednesday.